Okay, I've never, so this is a new thing. If anybody doesn't know me, I'm Logan's mom. Logan's dead. And I kind of fell apart. And then about a couple times I've cut all my hair off and it's craziness. And, and I can't deal with the world anymore and I don't go anywhere and for the first couple of years I didn't brush my teeth, and so by the time my world started spinning again, I had all this tooth decay, and so I just went about, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago and had all my teeth pulled. So if you have a problem understanding me, that's why. And I have dentures and I don't wear them, and I might eventually, I think I'm gonna get some, whatever that's called, where they put the stuff in the root things down into your teeth and they're like permanently in there. I think I might go ahead and do that. I don't know. But anyway, this is what I'm talking about. I tried to post it, but because my internet is horrible, it wouldn't post. So here's the deal. I was watching this preacher because I just was. I've been watching a lot of preaching stuff lately. And it popped up this guy. I don't even remember what his name was now. Let me look and see. It doesn't want to open. Stephen Anderson is the preacher. I think he's from Tempe, Arizona. And his video is labeled, "Don't Be an Organ Donor." And it's a real short video, but it's got 35,000 views. It's 2 minutes, 34 seconds. So it's pretty short little video, and
and she's like, no way, we're kind of talking about it, and she wasn't buying it, and
so I'm not stealing his words or whatever, but it is telling people not to be an organ donor because they'll let you die, try to steal your organs, and they have to take organs from a live body. They can't take them from a corpse, and so they're telling people, oh, we think your family member might not make it, so let's go ahead and cut them open and take their organs, and then people get better and leave the hospital, and blah, 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 blah. There's all these stories. Well, let me tell you what, this is not true. None of this is true. I'm not saying people are lying. I'm saying people are mistaken. Even sometimes, I was an RN practicing for over 20 years, and even sometimes people get mistaken about their own situation. They, especially if you have a family member that's very ill, and you've got, 3 or 4 doctors at a time sometimes coming into the room 5 or 6 times a day, and it just all kind of gets jumbled. They do not take, unless you donate, unless you're a living donor and like want to donate one of your kidneys or half your liver or whatever, which, they can do that. But they do not take organs in the U.S. They do in China. They do all kinds of crazy crap over there with organs. You can buy something in China. But they do not take organs in the U.S. from people who are in a coma or somebody who, it's never a, we don't think he's going to make it, or he's not going to have a good quality of life. Here, sign these consent forms and let us cut your loved one open and have their organs. That's not, that doesn't happen. Not in the U.S., it doesn't happen. If anybody thinks it has happened, they're mistaken. It doesn't happen. I didn't know a lot about organ donation from being an RN. I mean, I knew, a little bit about it, just because, there was rules about, who we thought may or may not qualify to be a donor, but it's not even something the staff goes and talks to you about. There's very specific groups, and they cannot, by law, they cannot and will not approach you, talk to you, anything about your loved one's organs unless your loved one is legally brain dead. They have to be legally brain dead. It's not they have a brain injury, not they have brain damage, not they're in a coma, not they're probably going to be brain dead later. None of that. They will not talk to you unless the person is legally brain dead. My son, we knew, would be brain dead within hours. And I said, let's get the ball rolling. We need to do what we need to do to donate his organs. His organs are perfect. And the little people came and they said, legally, we cannot talk to you. Because no decision should be made by a family or a doctor or anything, that is relating to organ donation. You need to do what is best, and the doctors need to do what is best for your child. And should your child become legally brain dead, legally, not, oh, he failed one test. No, it's a long process, legally brain dead. Then we can talk to you. So, these people that say, oh, my child is brain dead, and they turned off the vent, and then the kid lived for 2 more hours before they finally died. Well, guess what? That kid wasn't brain dead. If they take you off the vent and you take one breath, then you weren't brain dead to start with, because that means your brain stem is still working, which means you weren't legally brain dead, because you were still having brain stem activity, or you wouldn't have taken that breath. So I tried to write this guy, because I'm sure he's very, well-intentioned and all, and he's trying to protect his congregation and, humanity as a whole. So I tried to write this guy, but because my internet, which we all know sucks, because I live in the middle of nowhere and have satellite internet, that I'm going to try to open it here, my email. I went ahead and I sent him an email because it wouldn't go in just me writing words. It was too large, and it wouldn't go. I can't send files to anybody or anything. It's awful. So if I can get this to open, I'll tell you guys what I told him. But it's, he was even like, and a lot of people do that. They say something about, people with feeding tubes, and also they want to take their feeding tube out because they're brain dead. If you have a feeding tube and you're laying there, you're not brain dead. You might have brain damage, or, they think you're going to have enough brain damage to be in a persistent vegetative state. That's not brain dead. That's where people got all this stuff confused. In America, all right, here, just listen to the thing I sent him. Here it is. I saw your YouTube video on YouTube and felt compelled to write this. I also called and left their voicemail a message. It is long, but please read it and reconsider your video. I would be very happy to discuss any of this with you, and I gave you my phone number. I said, this is not true. The way it works in the U.S. is situations where people have true brain death. It is not when they think someone is going to die. They are truly brain dead, not in a coma or with brain damage. No hospital would allow any doctor to try to get an organ while you're alive. That's the way it is. And people say, well, they have to take them out of living people. They can't take them out of a corpse. This is how it happens, okay? No transplant organization will even talk to you about signing consent forms until your loved one is legally brain dead. not in a coma, not maybe or probably going to die. They will not talk to you about signing forms until actual brain death of your brain stem. Even the rest of your brain, even if the rest of your brain is dead, your brain stem will trigger you to breathe and tell specific organs that you are alive and to keep working, which is true. I mean, it's all with your adrenal glands and your endocrine glands. I mean, it's all this other stuff that your brain stem, even if the rest of your brain is gone, that brain stem right at the bottom here, it will tell you to try to breathe. It and it will have like all these other organs like putting out like chemicals and hormones, which is which keeps your body going. If that brain stem dies, that message to put out those chemicals and hormones stops, which is why people that are brain dead and the family won't give up and won't unhook them. I'm not talking about people with brain damage. I'm talking about people that are brain dead. Their organs shut down. Their liver, their kidneys, all that stuff shuts down until finally, I guess from electrolyte imbalance, most likely, probably their potassium shoots sky high because their kidneys aren't filtering it out. Stuff like that. They have a heart attack and they die. They go into cardiac arrest that can't be reversed and they die. All right. We'll not talk to you about signing forms until actual brain death. So what is legal brain death? Good question. Legal brain death is the death of your brain stem. Even if the rest of your brain is dead, your brain stem will trigger you to breathe and tell specific organs that you are alive and to keep working, like your kidneys and liver. Your brain stem starts a chain of events that causes other organs to release specific hormones and chemicals which keep your essential organs alive. That is why you hear of someone being brain dead and on a ventilator, but their kidneys shut down. That is why. So if the brain stem dies, you are dead, legally. There's no waking up after that. It has never and will never happen, not ever, not in one case. So in those cases where someone has a feeding tube, you have brain damage, not brain death. If you're taken off of a ventilator and you take 2 hours to die, you had brain damage, not brain death. With legal brain death, once the ventilator is turned off, you do not even attempt to take one breath because that brain stem is gone. There is nothing to tell your body to breathe. Okay, there's so much confusion about this. I knew some information. I type crazy because my keyboards are crazy. I knew some information about it as an RN, but I did not work in a hospital that did transplants, so I didn't really know all the rules. Then my son died. I quickly learned all the rules because we knew it would only be a matter of hours before we had brain death, and I wanted to donate his healthy 16-year-old organs. First, the transplant organization, because I asked the staff about it. Well, they told the transplant organization. Well, the transplant organization there at that large trauma center, they're there 24/7. Told me that they could not legally speak to me until Logan was declared brain dead because they did not want any decision that anyone made be biased by organ donation possibilities. That's my husband. I'll call him back. I forget where I was now. So we waited. I laid across my baby in the neuro ICU, and I'm probably going to cry, so look over that. I do that every day. I kissed his little toes over and over, just like I did the day he was born. I kissed his rough little knees and his skinny little arms. He still smelled like my sweet Logan. My skinny, short baby with his long brown hair and dark eyes. His little face still had some blood on it that had not been washed off, and for a long time he was still bleeding from his left ear. The intracranial pressure had his eyes open and bulging out in the ER, but once in ICU, they changed his dressing, and that released the pressure enough for his eyes to close again. I looked at the CT scans, and his little brain had essentially been separated from his brain stem, and his brain stem had already begun to die and had much damage. He was on the ventilator, and the setting was at 10, but his respirations were at 18 to 19 because he was at least attempting 8 to 9 breaths per minute. As the evening, then night went on, his breath slowly decreased as his brain stem died. At about 3 a.m., they were bouncing back and forth from 10 to 11, so he was occasionally attempting one breath. Then by 3:30 or so, he went to 10. All the breaths being done by the ventilator, and it never moved again. My son was brain dead. Because he is a minor, to declare brain death, there had to be 6 tests done by 6 doctors, each an hour apart. So it's not like one doctor just comes in there and says, he's brain dead, or he's going to be brain dead. Let's take his organs. That's not the way it works at all. It's just not the way it works at all. So this person looks at him, and we knew he was brain dead by 3:30. So they started at 6 o'clock. They started the tests, and all these doctors had to do different tests. And the last test was the apnea test they did at noon. They started at noon, and anyway, they turned the ventilator off. I'm just going to read it here. To declare him brain dead, they did all the different tests. They started at 6 a.m. when the first test, which of course he failed. But they had to wait at least an hour to do another test, and they did all these tests. The last test is the apnea test. They turn the ventilator down to 0 breaths per minute. So the ventilator's not giving any breaths. But what they do is they keep the oxygen flowing through the ET tube. So you still got lots of oxygen in your lungs, and the blood's still flowing through because your heart's still pushing it through to get the oxygen. But you're not breathing out. So you're not blowing out CO2. Well, the strongest thing that will make you want to take a breath is CO2 building up in your body from not exhaling and blowing off that CO2. So the way they do the apnea test, they turn the vent off, and then every couple minutes, they check your CO2 level. And they watch, because you're not breathing out, and they watch that CO2 level go higher and higher and higher and higher. And if anything on this sun is going to make your brain stem, on this planet, it's going to make your brain stem say, breathe, 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 it's going to be that CO2 level climbing. And they sit and they watch it go up. And then it has to be to this astronomically high level. And then it has to be above that level. I forget what it was exactly, but it has to be above that level for like so long, before they can say, okay, it's been above 65 for 15 minutes. His brain stem is dead, or it would have told him at least try to take a breath, something. So that's the final test to say, yeah, your brain stem is not going to trigger you to breathe no matter what. So that's why I say when people get confused when someone's not going to make it and they take them off the vent, and like a kid, and their mom holds them for 2 hours till they finally die. That kid wasn't brain dead. He might have had a lot of brain damage. He might have, was going to die from whatever later, but he wasn't brain dead. That is it's it's a very specific term that people don't understand. So anyway, I talked about here in this triggers this to breathe, CO2, da 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 da. Okay, so it has to be for like at least 20 minutes, and then they can say, okay, this is it, he's dead. That happened for my son at 12:21 p.m. It was just afternoon, because that was how long it took him to get through all these steps of these other tests that he had to fail before they would even do this test. Um, because they had to make absolutely sure his brainstem was not functioning. Then the organ people could talk to us. And by the way, I want to make a note, our Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance, Logan died because he was talking about how it was a money thing because organ transplants are so expensive. And I never knew really even why they were so expensive until Logan died. And then I knew right away why they were so expensive. Logan died at 12:21 p.m. on December 22nd. That is when my Blue Cross Blue Shield quit paying because Logan was dead. So he was no longer covered on my Blue Cross Blue Shield. And that is when my insurance quit paying. 12:21 p.m. on December 22nd. We did not, by the time you go through all the legal hoops you have to go through to donate organs, we did not get to donate Logan's organs until December 24th, Christmas Eve. Somebody wrote a comment there. I don't know how to see it. It's the first time I've ever done a live. So, anyway, the last 2 days, Logan had 2 RNs assigned just to him. Nene C commented, thank you, honey. But Logan had 2 RNs assigned just to him. Because it was literally, they were drawing blood out of his central line and doing everything through his A line, and like every like 5 minutes. It was insane because his brainstem quit working, so now they're having to like do what his brainstem would have normally done to keep his organs from shutting down. They were essentially trying to trick his body. So his kidneys and his liver and everything wouldn't shut down. They had to check these hormone levels and chemical levels and all this stuff just like every few minutes. It was crazy expensive, I'm sure. See, organ people, I guess, pay that bill and then that gets incorporated into the cost of the transplant to the people that get the organs and that their insurance pays and stuff. But so I didn't get the bill and I never saw it for what it cost after Logan's death. I'm sure it was over $1 million that was spent in the next 2 days. I'm sure. We didn't leave him. We saw everything, and it was crazy. And they have to keep doing all these pulmonary function tests and all these scopes and CTs and to make sure that he's not getting fluid in his lungs or trying to get pneumonia or anything like that, because if there's something wrong with these lungs, they can't take somebody else's lungs out and transplant Logan's in there if Logan's aren't pristine. Because there's no going back once they would take somebody else's lungs out. So anyway, here's the rest of my thing. Let me tell you a little bit about the costs of things. That's when our Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance stopped paying. The level of care he received had been huge. He had been to a hospital and received 23 minutes of life-saving type trauma care until he was loaded onto a helicopter. They had pushed fluid and blood into him, trying to buy him time for the helicopter to get there. Then on the helicopter, his heart had stopped. At the initial hospital, they also, too, put in a central line. They intubated him, all that, because they couldn't do it in the field because he was only like 2 minutes from the hospital when they found him. But he was in complete, like, vascular collapse. There would have been no way to get any IV line in him. So they put an interosseous line in his femur and to start pouring in fluids, and they ambu bagged him the 2 minutes to the hospital. So that hospital immediately called for a helicopter, started pouring. They took the osseous line out. They put a central line in. They intubated him so he wasn't being ambu bagged because that's not the most efficient. And started pouring blood and fluids into him just to try to stabilize him enough to throw him on a helicopter. So the level of care he had received had been huge. He had been taken to the hospital, received 23 minutes life-saving care. All right, then on the helicopter, his heart had stopped. He was already intubated at the hospital, and now on the helicopter, they had to restart his heart and keep him oxygenated and continued giving him IV fluids and blood products, trying to keep him alive and oxygenated long enough to get him to the large trauma center. Once at the trauma center, more blood and IV fluids were being pushed in. They put him on this thing called a rapid infuser. And I worked forever ago in a really small ER in Beckley, West Virginia. And, I mean, we had done that before with people. And we didn't even have a rapid infuser. So what we would do, instead of just opening the clamp and not having it on the pump and straight flowing into it, we would take, which I think a lot of hospitals did that, we would take a blood pressure cuff and wrap it around a bag of IV fluids or a bag of blood, and we would inflate the blood pressure cuff to push the blood or push the fluids in as fast as we could get them in. So basically, we were making a makeshift rapid infuser. Anyway, so they were pouring all this stuff into Logan, and let me see. Once at the trauma center, they gave him this and that. Okay, they put an arterial line in. Arterial lines are great because, like, it knows your blood pressure immediately. Like, there's no taking their blood pressure after that because you have a line going into their artery with sensors on the end that are telling them their blood pressure every second. Like, so you know immediately if their blood pressure starts falling, if their blood pressure starts going up, because we did a lot of that playing around. We would, they would give him stuff because his blood pressure would start bottoming, and they'd give him stuff to bring it up, but then it would start going too high, and they'd have to give him stuff to bring it down, and I mean, this was constant, the whole time Logan was in the hospital. There was an RN physically in our room. Not, he had one RN assigned to him. He had an RN that was in our room 98% of the time. And then after he died, I mean, he had 2 RNs at that point already, I think. Because it's just like, they're not sitting there doing paperwork, trust me. I mean, once he became brain dead, it was just every couple minutes. They're putting drugs to do this, drugs to do that. They're trying to keep his body balanced out in a way that he thinks he's asleep. He thinks he's in a coma. They're trying to trick his body into thinking it's still alive. It was amazing. But anyway, so the first hospital had put a central line in for great IV access, as well as 2 large bore peripheral lines. And it talked about the paramedics on the scene had initially put in an interosseous line into his femur Kind of looks like a meat thermometer. If you've ever seen that, they kind of put it on there and they go pop. And it's probably my husband again. I'll call him back. Um, um, so as soon as he got there, they started checking, um, assessing the level of his injuries to see what they could do. Unfortunately, they soon realized that his entire brain had been separated from his brain stem, and that the pressure dressing that was holding what was left of his brain in and skull together. Um, oh, sorry, I skipped a line. He had what was left of his brain stem was damaged, and he would die shortly. His brain stem would. His head was being held together. Da 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 da. So that was increasing the intracranial pressure inside of his skull, which was stopping him from bleeding and holding his skull together. But it also put pressure, was all that, the pressure was building up. His intracranial pressure was building up, so he was getting all this pressure pushed onto his brainstem. You know what I mean? And like, if you've ever heard anybody had a head injury or anything, and their intracranial pressure starts expanding, there's sometimes, they can go in and drill a hole and put a drain tube and drain that out, let that pressure off their brain, which saves their brain, because your brain doesn't have anywhere to swell. There's just, it doesn't have anywhere to go. So anyway, with Logan, of course, this wasn't an option to like do some miraculous surgery to save his brain. Um, so in my son's case, this was not an option because of his level of injury and the level of damage. He had a total of 4 doctors in the ER working on him, 2 trauma surgeons and 2 neurosurgeons. After assessing him and seeing his CT scans, it was apparent he was going to die soon. They let me and my husband go back after they had spoke with us. I knew from my limited knowledge as an RN who had worked in the ER of a small hospital years ago that they were right. Like when they first told me Logan's injuries were unsurvivable, I thought, these people don't know Logan. This is Logan. If anybody knew Logan, I mean, this is Logan. Logan can't die. There's something wrong. There's some mistake or something. But when I went back and saw him, from his intracranial pressure, because he still had his original dressing on and stuff, his eyes were open, and his eyeballs were bulging out of his head because he had all that pressure pushing and blood just pouring out of his ears, and there was just so much pressure, and it was crazy. It like, as soon as I saw him, I knew. Like, if this had been some stranger that came into the ER, I would be like, this guy's not going to make it, And, like, I knew as soon as I saw him, there was, before I even looked at the CAT scans, I knew there was, it was done, And so anyway, they let us go back. I'd been working in the OR for numerous years before this. But I still knew, looking at him, still not cleaned up, that he was gone. His eyes were open and his eyeballs protruding from the pressure. It seemed unreal, but there it was right in front of me. Anyway, so the donation process. After he was legally declared brain dead at 12:21 p.m. on December 22nd, the organ team were legally then allowed to speak with us. I donated all of his organs, but not his skin or bones. I don't know why, I just didn't do that. I just didn't feel comfortable doing that. They said by Virginia law, since he had died from a death that was not of natural causes, he had to have an autopsy. I knew that already, though. And the medical examiner would have to approve any organs that they could take. Because I guess if it's something they think, might mess up their autopsy results, if it might be something they want to look at autopsy or something, of course you can't take it and donate it because the medical examiner's going to want to see it. Well, because of Logan, the way, his death was, the medical examiner said they could have everything but his eyes. They wouldn't sign off on him taking his eyes. Um, I don't know with the damage that he had, if the back of his eyes, maybe there was damage behind there that they may not have even been able to use his eyes. If the medical examiner had allowed them to take them, but the medical examiner immediately said, no, you can't have his eyes. But I think it would have been great to know that people could see the world through his eyes. He had these really dark, dark brown eyes, and they were so dark brown. Like, you had to look really close to see his pupil because his eyes were so dark brown that they were almost black like his pupil. So, I put in here, this letter to this preacher who said, don't donate your organs. They'll kill you while you're alive. They won't kill you while you're alive. Trust me. I would love to have been able for someone to use his eyes to see the world. So we have 2 RNs at this point assigned only to Logan for the next 2 days. They're literally getting blood every 5 to 10 minutes and giving his body whatever chemical or hormone it needs to trick it into not knowing that he was dead. So that his organs would not start shutting down. This is why I tell you, if someone is taken off of a vent and takes 30 minutes or an hour to die, they were not legally brain dead before that. They may have been taken off of a vent because they have severe brain damage. But if they take one breath, then they are not brain dead. Big difference. And they will not take their organs in the United States. They will in other countries. In the U.S., they will not take their organs. They will not even talk to you about taking their organs if they're not brain dead. So all these stories you hear, it's just confusion. Please, please be an organ donor. Don't listen to this stuff. It's just confusion. Please be an organ donor. So they took his blood and they started the testing to see if he had anything that would prevent him from donating. And to start testing for matches, because Logan is 16 and only weighed 120 pounds. He could be listed on both the pediatric and adult waiting lists. They told me they hoped he was a match for a teenage girl on the list that only had a few days left to live and needed a heart and lungs. They would not give you specific details about the person. They won't tell you a state or specific age or anything like that. There are only a few labs in the country that can do the specific testing for transplant surgeries. I live in Southern Virginia. Logan was in the hospital in Richmond. So our closest lab that's certified is Virginia Beach. The testing takes 8 hours and the blood must be hand delivered so that there are no mix-ups. So after hours and hours, they realized the equipment used specifically for this purpose in Virginia Beach is malfunctioning. We have lost so much time. So they draw more blood and they send it by hand, of course, to the next closest lab, which is in Washington, D.C. Then 8 hours after that, we have the results and Logan can donate, and they're looking for matches. The teenage girl is a match. They find kidney people and a liver person. We donated his intestines, but they're not needed. They're like really rarely ever used. There's some birth defect, I don't even know what it is, that sometimes kids need pieces of intestine for something, but there was no kids waiting on the list. People are being called and prepped for surgeries. We found out later the teenage girl had been on the waiting list for the heart and lungs for 7 months, and she had been in ICU deteriorating for the past 5 months. I spent the last 8 to 9 hours with Logan, with my head on his chest, my ear laying right on his little heart. By the way, your heart can beat after you're dead until it stops from lack of oxygen or your organs shutting down and your electrolytes reaching levels that cause you to basically have a heart attack. Yes, exactly. And that's what I tell people. It's not, people think, oh, they'll kill you. They'll say you're dead and try to take your organs. And that's not the case. Logan had 6 different doctors. 6 different doctors because he was under 18, which changed the process and complicated it even more. 6 different doctors had to say, yes, he is brain dead. There's no question. He's brain dead. And so anyway, um, I spent the last 8 to 9 hours with my head on Logan's chest with my ear laying on his little heartbeat. Okay, and I talk about you because their heart will beat because your heart is kind of on its own little electrical system. So until something tells, like, stops that electrical system from working, like if your kidneys shut down and your electrolytes start getting all haywire and your sodium shoots up and your potassium shoots up, then you kind of have a heart attack almost and die. That's what'll stop your heart after all that. Anyway, I listened to his little heartbeat. I felt it so strong I can remember that on the side of my face. I heard the air flowing in and out of his little lungs from the ventilator. Right near the end, he had to have one last scope for them to check his lungs one last time to make sure he had not started getting any fluid or anything, from his death and from not moving, things like that. Several more CAT scans and actually 2 more MRIs to make sure his organs are all healthy. Even as an RN, I never understood how much care it took to keep these organs healthy for transplant after this person received a lung 5 years ago. Yeah, and I talk about that in here. They talk about the lungs. That is a big, big thing. That's like the most difficult of all the transplants is the lung, even worse than the heart, they said. All right, so that explains the cost. People talk about how I think this preacher had kind of thought that the cost of it was like they were saying people were dead because they could get so much money out of their organs. Honey, let me tell you what. Whatever these people's insurance paid, I cannot imagine how much it would have cost to cover my son's care to keep those organs healthy until they could go get them. Okay, so I bet Logan consumed over $1 million of care after his legal death to keep. Oh, this lady said people have no idea how grateful her family is. Well, I tell you, we've met the girl that got my son's heart and lungs. I talk about them in this little note here too. Logan consumed over $1 million of care. I'm sure it was crazy to keep his organs alive. I know it is much different in other countries, but in the U.S., this accounts for most of the cost, I'm sure. So on the morning of Christmas Eve, they are ready to take him to the OR. I don't know. I mean, I think I do understand. I think I do, because especially having lost Logan, I can put myself in the shoes of watching my child laying there dying, and if somebody, if it had been a different situation, if somebody said, he needs a kidney, I mean, you don't even know. I would be dragging people down there to get tested to be a living donor. I would do anything to get my kid what they needed. Okay, so I wanted to see him one more time after his donation surgery. I still somehow felt this need to protect him. I know that sounds irrational. So the girl who needed his heart and lungs, well, lungs are very complex. They need to kind of fit exactly, basically. So Nicole, the teenage girl, we know now her name is Nicole. She was in Boston Children's Hospital. Her surgeon came to where we were in Richmond, Virginia, to actually look at Logan's lungs before he would officially accept them. Logan was taken to the OR and opened. Her transplant surgeon from Boston looked at the lungs and the heart, but most importantly, the lungs, and then he accepted them. So, of course, those organs were taken first as they have to be done the quickest. He and an RN from Boston Children's Hospital actually took the lungs and heart by helicopter from our hospital to the airport in Richmond and then by private jet from Richmond to Boston. So people wonder where all the expenses come in. This is where the expenses come in. It probably took $1 or $2 million to keep Logan alive. And then we got to get those organs to where they need to be very, very quickly. You know what I mean? Like with your liver and your kidneys, you got time, but those other organs, you know, if we're getting organs from Richmond, Virginia, where we were, to Boston, where she was, you know, we got to kind of hurry that process along. Okay, so get there quickly as possible. Nicole had been taken into surgery and was waiting already under anesthesia for this surgeon who was leading her transplant team. His heart and lungs were successfully transplanted into this 14-year-old Nicole. She got her miracle on Christmas Eve, as did Thomas, who got Logan's right kidney and pancreas. Thomas was 36 years old and had been diabetic since the age of 6. This had caused him to lose his kidney function, and he had been on dialysis for several years, but now had begun wasting and was placed at the top of the transplant list. Daniel, who was 63, had lost function in his liver. My husband is just going to call back to back, and I'll answer him later. Had now began wasting and was placed at the top of the list. Okay, Daniel, who's 63, lost function of his liver due to non-alcoholic cirrhosis. The other kidney went to a man in his 30s with 2 children. That's all I know about him, as he never reached out to me. Thomas, because he received both a kidney and pancreas, immediately became no longer diabetic. So unless he rejects it, the kidney should last him for the rest of his life. After surgery, I went into a dim room with my sweet child. I kissed his now cold toes. I cried with my face on his skinny, cold arms. I kissed his soft little cheeks. He was now gone. Now it seemed so real. He was cold. I checked his incision line down his entire torso and abdomen to make sure they had closed him well, afraid that they would not take time to do it well since he was dead. But they had done a good job. My sweet child, I have written a few letters back and forth with Thomas and Daniel, nothing really specific, just updates, but little Nicole. I met her near her home in Miami, Florida. She was at Boston Children's Hospital because that was her hospital since she was 2 years old and her heart defect was found. I heard my child's heartbeat and heard his lung breathe. 15 months after his death, I told her that they are now hers and not Logan's anymore. We have met them numerous times since then, meeting her entire family and even some of her extended family along the way. She is now 17 and completely healthy. She is very active in sports without any problems. She goes to Boston every January for her checkup. I know this is long, but I want you to see the big picture. Like I said, I sent this email to this preacher. I want you to see the big picture of organ donation in America. This is the process, and it is followed very closely. I think many people don't understand what true brain death is, and that if you are truly brain dead, unless they trick your body, your organs will soon begin to fail and you will die within a week anyway. If anyone has read all of this, thank you for hearing my baby story. So I tried to leave that as a comment on this preacher's video, but I don't know if it's my internet or because it was so long. YouTube says no, you're not getting a comment that long past us. Sorry, lady. You know, but I just wanted to put out there that do not listen to these stories where, and like I said, it's not that people are lying. It's just that they're confused. They're confused about they're in America. There's no way that a doctor has gone to somebody and said, let's take his organs because he's going to die anyway. That's not the way the process worked. If they did that, I mean, they would lose their medical license. That's not the way it goes in this country. That's not the way it flows in this country at all. So, when people hear these stories about don't be an organ donor because they'll let you die so they can take your organs, or, oh, well, they can't take an organ from a corpse. It has to be from a living donor, so they'll take it from you before you're dead. No, 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 no. That's not it at all. That's not. You are technically a corpse because your brainstem is shut down and you're never going to take another breath on your own ever for the rest of your life. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. Logan's death certificate is dated December 22nd at 12:21 p.m. because that's when Logan was legally dead. And I just luckily had 2 more days. And luckily, he had all these healthy organs that were unaffected by, his head. So anyway, yeah, this preacher, I'm kind of reaching out to him because it wouldn't let me leave him my message because it was too long or whatever. And his video is "Don't be an organ donor" with 4 exclamation points. And his name is Stephen with a V Anderson. And I even reached out to him on there and gave him my phone number. And I'm like, please, no, don't tell people this. Don't. Because this is not true. If I thought at all that there was even a possibility that they would let some mother's child die so they could get his organs, or that if I thought there was even a possibility that they would take some mother's child to surgery and kill him to get his organs, I would be the first one to say, no, don't donate your organs, no, 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 no. But that is not how it is. That's not how it is at all. And I mean, I'm glad that everybody got a second chance with their life with Logan's organs, but, especially Nicole, and with getting his heart and his lungs. And she was, almost the same age as Logan, and they were literally, their chest cavities were basically the exact same size. They weighed the same, and her transplant surgeon said that his lungs just slid in and fit like they were Nicole's lungs. They fit exactly, and they said that the lungs are really hard to transplant like that. And the heart doesn't even have to be like, like I said, because Logan was 16 and he wasn't like a big 16. He only weighed 120 pounds, and he wasn't really tall. And So he was listed on the adult and the pediatric list. And because I guess you can only be on one list or the other if you're on the waiting list. So Nicole, when they put her on the list, she was like kind of on that line, so they weren't sure, whether to put her on the adult or the pediatric, and they had ended up putting her on the pediatric. And so luckily with Logan, they reached out and looked at both lists because all his other donors were adults, but they Nicole was going to die if Logan, had not died for another week. Nicole needed him to die that day. She, and so that's why, if there's a God and He controls these things and anything is meant to be, that is why Logan left me on Christmas Eve. Because Nicole, he died on the 22nd though, but Nicole needed her heart and her lungs on Christmas Eve. She couldn't wait another week for her heart and her lungs. And so this whole donation thing has become really very near and dear to me. So when I see videos, especially from really well-intentioned people, which I'm sure this pastor is, Stephen Anderson, that made this video, he's really, I'm sure trying to protect his congregation and people that view his videos on YouTube, because I think he has a really large congregation, to not put themselves at risk by being an organ donor. But it's just because he's kind of misinformed. He's heard these horror stories here and there by other people who are truly misinformed. But like, one of the people commented on his video and said, there's big corruption in hospitals for illegal organ trafficking. No, not in America. No, there's not. No, it's not. It is in China. And stuff. If your kid needs a kidney and he's going to die, and you got $500,000, you can go to China and you can buy your kid a kidney, and they'll put it in over there, and they'll probably do a really good job. But anyway, they tried to tell her my coworker's 20-year-old son had a brain aneurysm. They tried to tell her he probably wouldn't have a good quality of life, so she should donate his organs and let him die. No, they didn't. They will not say he has brain damage. Can we have his organs? They can't. They won't. Like I said, we knew Logan had hours before his brain stem would be gone, so that we could start the process to get him legally declared dead. And the organ donation team will not even talk to you until they are brain dead. Not they're probably going to be brain dead, not they might be brain dead, not they have brain trauma. See, that's what I'm saying. This lady has misheard, the family has misconstrued this story. They've misinterpreted what some doctor said or something. And I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying they've misunderstood the situation. And of course, lo and behold, he started breathing on his own. Yeah. Great. I'm glad their son is alive. If I thought there was any chance that they would have killed that 20-year-old kid to steal his organs without him truly being brain dead, there's no way I would say be an organ donor. But that didn't happen that way. His family maybe even think it happened that way, but it didn't happen that way. They harvest the organs, here's another comment, they harvest the organs of breathing donors without anesthesia. Patients were said to be brain dead. They began moving as they cut them open. Their vitals began experiencing pain. No, not true. They give them paralyzing drugs to stop this. Yes, they do in some cases, but let me tell you why. Because one of the ways they can tell if you're brain dead, you have reflexes. Like when they hit you on the knee at the doctor and your leg goes out and they, you have different reflexes. And some of the reflexes might come from your brain stem. Lots and lots and lots, most of your reflexes, they come from your spine. So that's why, like, people that have spinal damage, they can tell by what reflexes the person does or does not have, exactly where their break is, where their spinal cord has not, I'm not talking about the vertebrae being broke, I'm talking about where the spinal cord inside the vertebrae stops working. Any reflex that's controlled by the spine below that point, you won't have anymore. So, Logan's spinal cord, Logan was brain dead. His brain stem's dead. That's it. He's done. But his spine was perfectly healthy and intact. So, if you did that on Logan's knee, his leg is going to do that. Because that reflex doesn't come from your brain. It comes from your spine. If you take your hand and you put it, have you ever noticed if you touch something hot, you jerk your hand back before you even realize that it's hot? Your body reacts before, my dog is laying here farting in the bed. Your body reacts to pull away from that heat before you even comprehend the heat. That's because that reflex does not come from your brain. It comes from your spine. And your body is designed that way to save itself so that it doesn't take you a second and a half to realize to pull your hand off that hot stove. It's a lot quicker for your spine to respond than for the nerve impulses to go to your spine, up to your brain to process it, go back down and tell your spine, hey, tell that idiot to pull her hand off the stove. So there may be some movement when they go to do surgery, and it is reflexes that is coming from the spine. He's called me 6 times, so I'm going to have to end my live and go talk to him. But those reflexes are coming from their spine, not from their brain. That's part of the thing of declaring brain death. One of those tests that they do is specifically checking certain reflexes that come from the brain. The reflexes that come from your spine, that has nothing to do with whether you're alive or not. As long as your body's oxygenated and your spine is still intact, and, which is what you are when you're on a vent, your body's still oxygenated and your spine is still intact unless, there's a spine injury, then, like Logan's case with a head injury, yeah, all his reflexes that come from the spine and not from the brainstem were still totally intact because his spine wasn't damaged at all. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because my husband's called me a million times and he's going to lose his mind. But please, please, if anybody has any questions about organ donation, and if you think that maybe the doctors are giving you bad advice and your child is in the hospital, if you call me, I will get on a plane and I will come to Arizona. Or, I'll come to Seattle. I will come to wherever you want. I don't purport to be, rocket scientist about this stuff. I'll put my teeth in those so you don't have to see me there like this and be embarrassed. But I think I can give an unbiased view with at least a base knowledge of medicine, spending over 20 years as a practicing RN. And tell you whether you're getting legit kind of advice or, I think I have a lot of common sense about that kind of stuff in it. And if anybody ever is in a situation that they think they're not sure what to do about that, or they're being told this and they don't understand it, You know, if they've got 6 doctors coming in 6 different times a day and they're not sure and this is their child, and, you know, you call me up, honey, and I tell you what, I will get on a plane that day as fast as I can get my horses in the horse trailer to go be boarded somewhere. I will get on a plane and I will be wherever you are. I'll come to Texas. I'll come to New York. I'll come to wherever you are. And like I said, I'll put my teeth in so you won't have to be embarrassed by me showing up like this. But that's how I am right this second. And I will definitely, you know, try to have communication between you and doctors. Doctors and surgeons are not the best communicators. And I think that causes a lot of these issues. A lot of doctors, especially surgeons, trust me, I worked a lot of years in the OR. A lot of surgeons have God complexes. And they don't even try to explain things in a way that people understand. And I think that's what causes a lot of this. But yes, be an organ donor. They're not going to kill you to take your organs. If they even think they want your organs, they're going to bust their butts to keep you alive as long as they can. Because if your organs start dying, you're no good to them. You're no good to them. Trust me. And they're not going to try to take your organs if your brain stem has one little oomph of anything left in it. You know, if any of those doctors even thinks you might have maybe kind of passed one of the tests, they're going to stop. They're going to shut that down. Or, I mean, if there was a hospital that did any of that knowingly in this country, oh my gosh, the wrath of everybody. That hospital would get shut down. The doctors would lose their licenses. The RNs would lose their licenses. They would be prosecuted for murder. There's no way. Please, please, please be an organ donor. If you have any questions to think, well, maybe I shouldn't be a donor because I've heard of this or I've heard of that, call me. Call me. I'll give you my home phone number because I'm old school and I use a landline. So don't text me because I won't get it. My cell phone's laying over here somewhere, probably dead. But if I've ever gone on a trip and anybody needs to get a hold of me, they know. I have that, you know, Chevy OnStar stuff, all that whacked out stuff in my car. And they call my car phone because I'm not going to have a cell phone. It's not going to happen. And if I do have it, the battery's going to be dead. So, welcome to my world. Anyway, though, anybody, if you have any problems, any questions, just want clarification on any of it, whether it's you, whether just to put that little heart on the bottom of your driver's license, or, you know, 2 weeks from now, you have a family member that's in a car accident, and there's a head injury, and you're not sure what, you know, somebody says something about organ donation, and you're not sure what to do about it, you call me. Because I'm not going to push organ donation if I think that child is this much still alive. You know, there's no way. There's no way. Not after bearing my own child. There's no way. You know, I wouldn't have done it before, but especially as a mother that's buried a child, there is no way that I would want another mother to bury a child. And I would give that mother whatever advice I thought they needed. I'm sorry, I'm crying. It's making my sinuses be crazy, and I'm... Anyway, I hope that this preacher, Stephen Anderson, I'm going to say his name again. If anybody knows this guy in Tempe, Arizona, I think it's his church. Give him a big old shout out and tell him to call me or anything. See right here, this person said, my friend had his heart stop and he was dead for over 5 minutes. They put him on ice, blah, 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 and brought him back. He wasn't dead. Just because your heart stops does not mean you are dead. You are not dead until your brainstem is dead. That is when you are legally brain dead. And see, that's what I'm saying. People are like, well, he was dead for over 5 minutes and they brought him back and now he's fine. He's 100% normal. No! Just because your heart stops, they're not going to rush to your family and say, hey, his heart stopped. Can we have his organs? That's not how this works. And people get all this stuff confused. If his heart stopped for 5 minutes, he was not dead. He was not dead. His heart wasn't working for 5 minutes. My son's heart stopped in the helicopter, and they restarted it. Logan wasn't dead in that helicopter because his brainstem was still working. So until his brainstem died, he wasn't dead. And then it still took hours upon hours upon hours upon hours after that to go through all the testing by all the different doctors to say, yes, he's brain dead because his brainstem. See, and people don't understand. Just because your heart ain't beating for 5 minutes because you're underwater or whatever, that doesn't mean you're legally dead. They're not going to try to steal your freaking organs over that. Please, please, people, please share this video. I know I look awful without teeth in this video, but I'm not putting my teeth in at this time of night to make a video. So please, donate your organs. Thank y'all. Bye.